right, welcome everybody. Thanks everybody for coming out and joining us for this fireside chat or just discussion amongst friends. I'm joined today by Northeast Georgia Health System, who is in the middle of a cloud journey. And so we're gonna get a chance to hear about that journey and what's led up to that journey and all the preparation work and all the lessons that have been learned so far from some industry leaders that have got some very forward thinking in the space. And we're also joined by Matt as well from AWS, and he'll be able to provide kind of an interesting lens and perspective kind of at the broad market in terms of what he's seeing with some other folks. So to get started though, why don't we do a round of introductions? Matt, why don't we start on your end?
Sure. So I'm Matt Dinger. I lead the global Epic on AWS practices for Amazon. Spent about a decade of my career at Epic. I created their current implementation methodology as well as the Gold Stars program. Been at AWS in this role for about 3 years. I also approach all of my work as a patient. I was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes when I was 5 years old. On the board of T1 International, a nonprofit for that. And so I also like to always think of things from a patient standpoint. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for joining. Stuart.
Yeah, awesome. So I'm Stuart Samples. I'm the Chief Technology Officer at Northeast Georgia Health System. Prior to that, I was actually CIO of ThyssenKrupp North America. So all the escalators and elevators you're running around in, we probably had something to do with those long years ago. But I've been in data center transformation and service delivery management for better half 20 years, and actually started, my background was in biotechnology. So it's a little bit of a homecoming for me and something I just absolutely love. And I just learned about Matt. I'm a type 1 diabetic as well. There you go.
I didn't know that.
So, stay away from the cobbler. Just kidding.
Yeah.
Chris?
I was going to say I'm well on the way with the apple cobbler.
Pre-diabetic.
I'm so excited. I didn't know this was a fireside chat. And so are they going to be bringing the fire?
No, I know.
Some marshmallows.
Chili.
What can we put something together in that?
We should. It's cold outside. Next time we'll have an actual fire. Yeah, okay. Fair enough.
I'm Chris Paravate. I'm the CIO at Northeast Georgia Health System. I've been there for 15 years. I have over 30 some odd years of healthcare IT. And I do like to fling marshmallows off the stick at a fire.
Yes. We do need to bring the fire to the fireside chat, certainly. All right, so my name's Curtis. I'll be the host and moderator and the question asker of the session today. And I run our cloud practice at Optimum Healthcare IT, and we've been partnering with them quite a bit on helping out their overall journey. But prior to being on the consultant side of the fence, I was on the customer side. So spent about 15 years working at healthcare organizations, helping them kind of modernize their technology and implement IT operations. So, all right, well, let's dive in. So I think we always want to start off any of these discussions with why, right? What was it that led to NGHS taking this journey, right? What were the challenges you guys were facing that started you on such an adventure?
So let me first maybe give you a little context of Northeast Georgia. So in 15 years, we've gone from 1 hospital to 5 hospitals. We've gone from about 6,000 employees to 14,000 employees. We're growing, and it's in a growing market like several of you. We've had the benefit of being a late adopter relative. We went live with Epic in 2017. And as we did, we built the infrastructure to really support that and all the systems in our data center. We have a beautiful data center. We're well-suited, well-powered. We have a disaster recovery site in Brasstown Bald, which is in the very northern tip of Georgia, that is co-powered by TVA, Georgia Power, and Duke Power. And we run dark fiber all the way back down through Georgia's university network. So there wasn't an issue. The issue really is the world is changing very rapidly. And the fact of the matter is the highest risk that any organization faces is a cyber risk. And that's real. And while you can stand up a primary site and a DR site, you have to recognize that the industry has come so far and the resources are there. So as we started this, we had about 3 years left on our runway for hardware. and we started the dialogue about where do we want to be. We didn't want to be first. We kind of have a policy of, or at least it's my policy, we don't want to be first, we're just going to be the best. And that starts with very practical design, conversations with the leadership team about how and why. But really, the cyber posture is a significant one. I can staff a data center. I can staff the technologists. I can afford the data center. It's really about how do we become more nimble in the way that we're delivering that technology. And while that data center is going to be really nice, we're going to reclaim that in office space, which seems absolutely crazy, right?
That's awesome. And Stuart, kind of curious from the CTO lens, someone looking at the technology and kind of the technical stack that you have today, and then kind of the future that you've established here with cloud. What put you on the journey? What was it that was kind of a driving motivation for you?
Yeah, sure. Thanks for asking. For me, in almost all cases, it's cybersecurity. So on-prem, we have an incredible team, great deal of technology and capability to protect the environment and secure our patients' data. But having the opportunity to build it greenfield inside of a cloud infrastructure, it'll be significantly different and even more hardened. So for us, taking that journey, as Chris said, we've got a runway. So it's not a burning platform. We're not on fire. I don't have to get out of it now. We have the time to build, design, and configure it best practices, best of breed, to make sure that we keep it secure and that we can continue to grow. Our pace of growth, as Chris said, is gigantic. And we are growing like crazy. So making sure we do it right now, make sure that we can support the future.
Awesome. Thanks. And Matt, I'm kind of curious from your perspective. So you get to talk to health systems and you get to see all kinds of folks take these journeys. What are you seeing in terms of motivations? What are some of the drivers that are forcing them down a journey?
Sure. So certainly some that Chris and Stuart talked about in terms of security posture, as we're seeing, innovation that makes that more available in addition to the technology itself, things like isolated recovery environments that we're seeing. Razor thin margins, so things for organizations be able to cut costs. It's funny, I was talking to a CIO this morning who said, nobody moves to the cloud to save money. And I was like, I disagree. I have 28 examples of customers who are moving to the cloud to save money. And so that is a huge motivator. And then also for organizations like NGHS that have some sort of rapid growth, they need flexibility to be able to do this. I used to talk to CIOs who, you're on a 5-year hardware refresh. You spend 2 years way over provisioned. You spend 1 year feeling comfortable. Then you spend 2 years saying no to everything and terrified that you're doing an off-cycle refresh. And so a lot of motivation there for groups that are growing and changing, which right now is a lot of folks.
Very true.
I think that's a really good point is, when we would size hardware, we'd take a vendor spec and we'd add 50, 60%, maybe 100% capacity to that. And we knew we were hiding software flaws, we were hiding process inefficiencies, and we just wanted to be sure, right? So that's all that capacity you're buying up, and you may not even totally utilize it, right? So a cloud strategy is far more postured towards being nimble to that gear. We are in the process of acquiring a 200 physician multi-specialty practice. We will turn that up and without adding any staff to IT. I mean, it'll be that, and that's the capability and the question of how does this fit and what was your strategy? It's not about where we are today. It's where we're a $4 billion organization. We're going to be a $6 billion organization in 2 years. How do I ensure that we can scale and be nimble enough from moving from 14,000 employees to 18 or 20,000 employees? And what does that look like inside of IT?
That's great perspective. I appreciate that, guys. One of the things that was interesting to me was a recent survey that was done. Cybersecurity was actually on the lower end of the priority structure. A lot of when CIOs were interviewed, a lot of organizations said, it's trying to get out of capital investment cycles, trying to modernize the technology stack, things like that. And cyber was actually on the lower one, which it was every time I kind of refer to the graphic, I always comment that every organization that I've taken to the cloud, we've improved their security posture just purely from the fact that we get to build it greenfield with best practices from the foundation. So it's great that that was a top priority for you guys and an important motivator for you to move down there. And so as we shift a little bit, I want to talk a little bit about, you guys aren't on a burning platform where a data center is about to get sold or something that's driving you. So you really had the time it took to do a lot of the right foundational pre-work, things like that. And so, we spent almost 6 months with you guys with talking strategy. You guys spent probably 6 to 12 months before that, laying the groundwork, things like that. I'm just kind of curious from your guys' perspective, was that time well spent? What were some of the value that you got out of spending and investing in all of that foundational strategy, base type work of getting the organization on board?
So maybe I'll start with a little bit of the C-suite and how to get the C-suite prepared, and then I'll let Stuart kind of talk into the tactics of executing. For me, it really started with a conversation with Carol, who's our CEO, and of this posture of how do we become more nimble, how do we take shelter in a more progressive technology stack. How do we leverage a partner like AWS? At that time, we were evaluating AWS and other partners for that service. And that was the first dialogue. And then we brought it to Carol's strategy cabinet, includes the CFO and others, and said, okay, well, how does this change our operating model, right? Because we've got a CapEx, plan around IT. Well, we do a strategic financial roadmap that's a 3-year roadmap, and we said, oh, okay. So in 2025, we know that this is going to be an operating footprint, and we put that in, and we went through that discussion with the board very early on. Frankly, my peers, I report to the CEO, would have been completely fine with me going, hey, guys, we're going to the cloud, and we'll figure out how to pay for it with the finance team and go on your merry way. But they really, they needed to know the why and really understand the context, because it's not for me to do that under shroud of secrecy, right? When I took this role 10 years ago, I had a conversation with Carol, and I said, Carol, do you feel like, your previous CIO told you you were impenetrable from a cybersecurity perspective? Imagine saying that 10 years ago. And I said to Carol, do you believe that? And she says, well, I'd like to believe that. I said, well, I'd like to believe that too. That's a fairy tale. And so let's engage partners and understand where our posture is, where are our challenges. And then as we bring those partners in, that will give you confidence in what my team is delivering, and you'll know. You won't trust, but you'll actually know, and you'll be part of that. So a big part of my activity and in that strategic planning is to walk them through that journey and really to understand it, not in the technical aspects of it, in the business context of what does it mean. Well, yeah, we can shut down non-production environments and save processing time. Do you know that we buy that hardware? Do you know that we replicate our production environment? We have, hundreds of thousands of dollars, millions of dollars in Brasstown Bald and a colo site. Are you aware of that? Do you know that my staff have to drive 1 hour and 45 minutes over part of Blue Ridge Mountains to get there, to service that equipment? Those were the dialogue that we had, so that the decision was not my decision or something I was thrusting upon them. It was a strategic decision that we made as an organization, that the CFO clearly understood, that the chief strategy officer clearly understood, that the board had confidence in, and it was well informed. And that takes time to, if you just said, oh, we need to go to the cloud, okay, well, sure. How? Why? Because you will have problems, and we will have problems, right? And so it's some expectation management. We're going to have problems, and here's how we're going to deal with it, and this is how we're going to work through those things. So that conversation had started with Carol, and then across the strategy cabinet to really architect that, bring that to the board inside of a financial strategic roadmap, a risk profile, so the organization could really understand why. And, and not to be first, right? It still feels like I'm still pretty close to the front of the line, which is a little scary, but we'll let you talk about that more.
Yeah, Matt will let you know that you're not the exact front of the line.
Thank goodness. Yeah.
Stuart, I'm kind of curious from your perspective, right? All the strategy work that you went through to not only, enabling the environment and getting the ecosystem and all the executives bought into it is kind of one body of work, but also the technology teams and getting all of the directional strategies in place and guiding principles and all of that. Maybe talk a little bit about some of the value that you saw out of putting energy into that prior to starting a migration.
Yeah, sure. Happy to. I think for us, again, kind of understanding it's a journey. There's no question that this takes time, it takes effort, and the better planned and coordinated it is, the easier it's going to be. A lot of the groundwork that Chris had already laid with our executive and top leadership team really paid dividends to us, helping people to understand. And by the way, we're going to have to educate all of us. It's not just an IT initiative. Everybody needs to understand what it means to shift from a CapEx model to an OpEx model and how technologies are and will be delivered in the future. So that gave us a good opportunity to really engage and start that training initiative and to educate not only our IT employees and staff, but also our senior leadership teams. Helping them to know where we're going is almost as important as telling them where they are. Yeah. Right? We can talk about risk and cyber and all of the things all day long, but you've got to help them see that vision and become part of it. And we've got a really engaged team, and Chris has managed that very well.
Awesome. Thank you. So, Matt, I'm kind of curious, your lens with the industry perspective that you have, do you see organizations spending a lot of time on the front end strategy, putting that in place prior to moving, or are you seeing, how long are you normally seeing folks spend?
Sure. So there's definitely a variety that we see across the board and a number of factors that are in there. I wish that more groups would spend the kind of time that Northeast Georgia did. I think it was excellent in terms of, okay, not too much to try to boil the ocean, but enough that we can look beyond, okay, here's where we already have a footprint, or this is what might be the easy button, into, really evaluating how folks in the industry are having experience with those different decisions, what the cost of those different decisions is. So there's that internal education, but there's also that even the team itself has to learn. I took off my jacket so I work for a tech company, and we move pretty fast, at least faster than some areas in healthcare sometimes. I say this as a patient. And that is, I talk to organizations who are like, oh, I spoke to Epic and they said we can't fit in the cloud. And it's like, oh, when did they tell you that? It was like a year ago. And it's like that was light years in the past. And things are changing and evolving and getting better and better. And we're seeing more data that's coming out, but people need to take time and evaluate that. At the same time, there are certainly organizations who say, I had a cybersecurity event 2 months ago and I need to improve my security posture, or my data center flooded twice last year. And in those events, sometimes you don't have the luxury of time, and that's okay. You can make up for that gap in talking to people who have gone before, in working with partners who have the experience to do so as well.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, one thing to highlight too is even when we look at the Northeast Georgia kind of timeline and story, early on, while you were still developing your strategy, you took the tactical step of setting up Epic Cloud Read Only in place to help bridge some of the cybersecurity risks that you guys felt you had, and to help improve that kind of extra copy and business continuity perspective. So even while you're developing the strategy, it didn't mean that you didn't take very calculated, specific steps in terms of adoption and movement. So that's just an important thing to highlight. Shifting a little bit to as we see organizations go on these journeys, a lot of things change, right? And one of them is how they engage with vendors, how they engage with partners, what their strategies are with them. As you see a lot more SaaS offerings, you see a lot more, organizations on the other side of the table are trying to figure out how to support organizations like yours that are going on cloud journeys and things like that. So I'm just kind of curious, what has your approach, or how has your cloud journey impacted kind of how you engage with your vendors or how you approach partners?
So in one aspect, our partnerships have always been the same, right? We are looking for business solutions and partnerships that are very engaging. in a way that, for example, that AWS owns our install, just like we own our install. And they're vested in our success. And I'm totally fine with selling that, and being able to share that, with the team here or other places, because that is a strong partnership. And that was really important for us. So as we think about our partners, right, I can name, we have 385 applications.
407.
It's
Okay.
lower every time he says it, and it's higher every time he says it.
Pulling
So
it down, right?
Never a better time to
Which,
rationalize.
which is not, it is not a terrible amount, right? I mean, I know some of my peers that have twice that, right? And we've been very deliberate about, we only have one EMR in any environment. There's not a non-production environment of another EMR. All legacy systems are out of the environment because they're baggage, right? So my partners, though, Epic, Juniper, AWS, Optimum has been a great partner in really enabling a lot of those technologies. And we think about those beyond just an implementation, right? So it's super important that we stay connected with AWS, and we evaluated the market in that. And that was a strategic differentiator for us. Technically, most of the big cloud providers could all support us. We are well within their main line. The question is what additionally are we going to, how is that relationship going to mature and stay connected? And in a meaningful way that next year, when I'm a year into my production cloud journey, that we're still having a conversation with AWS about what's next, right? And how do we continue to tune that? How do we optimize that? How do we continue to realize value in that? Because as all of you know, I mean, it is accelerating incredibly fast.
Yeah, that's a great point. I feel like too, is as organizations are taking cloud first strategies, they're a lot more dependent on somebody else's success for their success, right? And not only, from a cloud vendor perspective and, the reliance and resiliency of them, but also folks that are helping them get there. And so, Matt, I'm kind of curious from your perspective, in the industry, are you seeing a lot of customers kind of go at it alone? Are they trying to say, hey, we've got the team, we've got the capability, we know how to do this? Or is this like everybody is trying to get help on these types of journeys?
So almost all organizations are looking for help and working with a partner to do so. It's just, they've got so much going on within those organizations, and working to get their teams educated to get to the level that they need to do some of this management takes time. And you can't, have projects like this that go on for 36 months. It's just not tenable to do so. It's also, we are, probably a little bit earlier on than Chris would like, but we're a little bit earlier on in the cloud journey as far as that's concerned with EHR from that standpoint. And there's a lot of knowledge that people are looking for that they don't necessarily have in-house. Which is why, working with a partner can lead to so much success for organizations to do that. And it can be well worth, what they invest in that partnership. But like you said, the partnership itself is so key.
The analogy I would use, and then I used this a long time ago when we were implementing Epic, is just because you can buy a Porsche doesn't make you a race car driver. Okay? You're still the owner.
Yeah.
Okay? So we own our environment, and we own the production, and we own the outcome. But I need somebody in the passenger seat coaching to optimize that experience, right? And that helps to accelerate where you want to go, right? So we're moving probably not as fast as Curtis would like us to go, but very pragmatic and very deliberate, and with a clear outcome and a clear timeline. That can't be achieved if you say, okay, I'm going to spend the next 12 months retooling my team to be cloud certified. That's like going to Epic certification, okay? I've been to Epic certification, and it's like you sit down, you're like, oh my gosh, now what do I do, right? And so you need that coach, you need that, and you need to be clear about lines of accountability. But at the end of the day, you own the vehicle, and you have to be proficient in understanding that. And in some cases, those applications are going to change, and some of those partners are going to change. You're still the owner. And so being very clear about your architecture, who are you partnering with, why, how do they align to what you're trying to achieve, and then be very deliberate on timelines.
It's really interesting. So KLAS did a report on public cloud for Epic-specific customers back in November. One of the things that I was most excited about in that report is the relationship score. So that's a combination of a few metrics. And AWS's relationship score was 23 points above next to the next competitor in that space. And that's key because, yep, I may be sitting in the passenger seat and Chris is a great driver, but I feel like I own the car too. Or at the very least,
you're going to die in that car crash.
Because if it crashes, I'm
just
right
saying,
there.
you're coming with me.
I am right there with you. Yeah. And there are so many partner organizations out there, and we can't spend time with everyone. So that's why we invest also with groups that have that same approach and feel that same ownership, like Optimum Healthcare IT.
Like, I'm not sure where that puts me in the car exactly. Am I in the back seat?
You're right there.
You're in the trunk.
Am I on the top, just holding on?
You may be in the engine. I'm
Yeah.
not sure. Well, you
Depends
mentioned
on how
that.
things go.
Yeah, exactly.
Maybe in a trunk.
There you go.
I'm just teasing.
So for us, like cloud read-only is a great example of that. That was at NGHS our first large-scale engagement with AWS, other than some, we'll call it gentle flirting and some consulting here or there. But building up that landing zone for read-only to protect our data. So primary data center, secure, ransomware protected, backup and DR data center, secure, ransomware protected, but still at the pace and the sophistication of hacking events and ransomware at scale, we really wanted a cloud read-only. We needed an immutable instance. When that was built, your AWS's investment in helping us to stand up that infrastructure and configure it in such a way that it's truly isolated. We had no idea initially how long it would take to replicate that much data, and it's a large, large data set. I think it took 4 days from point of initiation to completion, and now it replicates in real time every 2 seconds. Every 2 seconds, I have a copy, an offline, immutable copy of our entire Epic instance in the cloud. That's a far cry from where I was. So that base investment and analysis through Optimum and AWS was a good move.
This is also a good example of things moving quickly. You don't hear about cloud read-only environments anymore. Why not? Because they're not just read-only anymore. So now we call it isolated recovery environment in the cloud, because working with Epic, they were able to do some development on their end that gives it limited write capabilities now. And yeah, just a perfect example.
Helps a lot.
So along those lines, Epic is kind of at the center of the ecosystem in a healthcare system, right? So a lot of organizations that were doing cloud activities and migrations prior to Epic being supported, we're kind of doing these tangential type systems, and now we're seeing organizations like start with Epic. We're seeing a lot of activity around Epic. And Matt, I know that this is like a primary focus of yours at AWS. Maybe share with the audience a little bit about, how many customers are you guys seeing with this stuff? What's the rate of adoption that you're seeing? What kind of activities are you seeing in the industry? Plus, Chris will feel better that he's not like alone, like leading the charge.
Thank you.
With some of this. Go ahead.
Well, yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I started at AWS just 3 years ago. We had 2 customers. And so most customers, even as we kind of came up through that time, they would start with disaster recovery. Once we had the ability to do what was then cloud read-only, folks would do that. Even sometimes training environments and non-production, because they wanted to dip their toe in the water. Then we saw a shift where groups were saying, nope, let's do all of Epic. We know we need to do this. We know we're moving to the cloud to really get all of those benefits. We know we need to just jump in. Now, more and more, I'm seeing organizations who are saying, yep, we're going to do Epic, and we're going to do 200 integrated applications that we're viewing as most critical, with a plan to eventually move everything. So trust has certainly been built in the cloud, and also the number of customers that are on there. So we have more than doubled year over year. As of this morning, there are 28 customers who are now at some point in their cloud journey with AWS. 9 of those are live in their Epic production environments are live in AWS. 8 more of those will be live by the end of the year. And then again, the ones who join us, which usually have timelines that are moving into 2025, 2026.
Yeah.
When is it?
Yeah.
But are going to be live then as well. So we see more of those groups that are coming on board.
And you talked a little bit about kind of the integrated apps, and so maybe share a little bit of your perspective as well too. Of Epic is kind of the crown jewels in the center of it, but what are you seeing around Epic? What are you seeing in terms of adoption of everything else? And especially, I'm curious when it comes to organizations that are modernizing their integrated apps by looking at either replacing or going to an Epic product that does the same, or a SaaS offering. What are you kind of seeing in that space?
Sure. So spending a decade at Epic, I mean, I spent a lot of time pretending that Epic was the center of the universe, and very comfortably doing so. And I say that with all the love in my heart. But if your EHR is leveraging all of the benefits of the cloud, all of that uptime, all of that response time improvement, exception rate percentage decreases, but your blood bank is down, or your lab ordering system is down, or your PACS is down, are you really up? Are you really providing patient care if your EHR is available, but these other systems are not? And no, you're not. I mean, certainly you have highly trained, excellent clinicians who are making sure that the patient is safe, but they are not working with all of the tools in their tool belt in those situations. And that's why it is so key to have those other systems leveraging it, and ideally in the exact same place that your EHR is, so you're not dealing with latency issues at all.
Yeah, that's a great point. So Chris, I want to pivot a little bit. You probably know all of the CIOs in the United States. Every time I turn around, someone else knows you that I did not know there was a connection there. So obviously, before you went on this journey, you probably went around and tried to get advice, tried to get input, tried to get this from folks. What was the advice that you received that was probably the most helpful?
Wow, you are going to stump me.
Yeah, I know.
Most helpful. So as a CIO, it's incredibly important to have your network. And it's not that you're going to get a complete solution. What you're going to get is a gem of information. And then you have to put that together into a strategy. And then you have to tune it to your organization and know where you are in that maturity. And that's fundamentally a big part of my role and why I come here. Why do I come here? I really come here to connect with my peers. And I do. I give them, hey, here's how we did this, and God, don't do that again. And so as you think about those things, each organization is slightly different. What I realized is that we're very fortunate in that we've got a very flat architecture, we've got a very flat application design, and that actually enables me to move faster, right? We only have one, lab interface to our specimen machines, right? We only have one ERP system. We only have one of things. We don't have many, and that allows us to spend less time figuring out how to consolidate and more time executing. And so that helped me really with some confidence. And then it's really understanding where your health system is in your IT sophistication against other organizations. And understand what you need out of partners to make that realize. So I hope I answered your question.
Yeah, no,
I maybe rambling.
I intentionally didn't give you that question beforehand.
That's all right.
See if I can
That's
stump you.
okay.
So what, I guess then to follow up to that is, what gem would you give going forward? So if another CIO approached you in the hall and said, hey, no, you guys are on this journey, you've had to have learned something along the way, what advice would you have?
So there's a lot of misconceptions about what is going on in the cloud and what applications are available in the cloud and how they're hosted. So do your homework. If a cloud provider says, oh, well, we work with XYZ vendor and we're our preferred partner, what does that mean? What does that mean to egress and ingress fees? What does that mean to your environment? Because when you start peeling that back, you find that you're actually just looking for a cloud-hosted solution. And there is really no benefit if, let's say, you're running an Oracle system and it's in Oracle's cloud, or if you're running this application and they're aligned with an operating system or something like that. That's just not the case. And you really have to kind of understand that. And then the other thing I would really challenge you to do is pick up the phone and call your vendors and understand, and you guys have the official word, and then you have people like Matt that you've known for a decade, and you can go, okay, so what's the real truth here? And it feels like this. Is that accurate? And they're like, yeah, that's pretty accurate. And it's really reaffirming. And that was kind of a moment for me as I was talking to other CIOs and what their perceptions were of cloud and where to go. And then I started peeling that back and saying, no, really, what does it mean? And then I guess the other thing I would tell you is be very deliberate about what region you're in, how that's going to work, where is that going to go. That's in that architectural design. It's a nuance. But if you pick a SaaS-hosted environment, let's say in AWS, and it's region 1, and you're standing up your cloud environment in another region, what are the implications to that architecture? And know what that is, right? And so that's part of the architectural strategy and the planning to make sure that you've been very thoughtful and you don't stumble over your feet.
Yeah, that's good advice. Stuart, I'm kind of curious from you, from a CTO lens, if a CTO peer stops you in the hall and says, you're on this journey, you've clearly learned something already. What have you learned? What advice would you have for them?
Yeah, I think for us, just to build on what Chris had shared, understanding your existing application landscape is really critical to being successful in any transformation, whether that's data center transformation or cloud transformation. Knowing your apps, knowing how those interfaces behave and perform across the entire enterprise really drives for us the opportunity to rationalize, reduce cost, improve security, and reduce complexity. So for us, as we start to choose the applications that will take us into the future, some of our partners are very well suited, and they could be a SaaS interface for us, or they could be something we move to our own AWS cloud. But as we take that journey, making sure that we have an engagement with every one of our application providers to understand where the risks and the benefits are. Because in some cases, it's smarter for me to sunset an application that's difficult to move to the cloud and go to a SaaS-based solution. In other cases, there may be a SaaS solution that's out there that's 7-8 times more expensive that just doesn't make sense. That's great. You've got a cloud solution, but I'm not going to increase my OpEx by 10x. The ROI is not there. So understanding that footprint really drives value, and it gives us the opportunity to better secure and deliver it.
Yeah.
One other thing that I learned really early on is all of you who deal with contracts, never get backed in a corner where you can't host that environment wherever you want. That's right. And I don't know who told me that. I think it was Cone Health that told me that. There was I think it was Doug from 4 years ago. He said, make sure when you renew a contract that you can host that privately and you're not restricted to putting it anywhere you want, and make sure that contract you don't get pinned in that contract.
Yeah. Right.
So there you go. That was a CIO advice.
There you go.
4 years ago.
That worked. You got there. Eventually, you got there to the answer.
Yeah,
to the question.
he was a little bit further out than I wanted to go.
Awesome. So let's talk a little bit about kind of part of a journey, right? There's a lot of things that change, but your staff, bringing your staff along for the journey, right? And having them be upskilled and having them be, to your point, right? In the driver's seat of the car, even though maybe they don't know how to drive the Porsche and they've got someone trying to help them, but they're the ones that feel like they're in the driver's seat and owning it. So, what's happened so far? What have you guys found that's worked in terms of upskilling your staff and getting them to maintain that driver's seat type of accountability, but with a new technology that is, it's new to them?
Yeah,
You
I'll
wanna
jump
take
on that one. So this is
I
good.
think this is group therapy.
yeah,
I think we're starting to
We'll get a couch in here later.
I was crying in the hallway before I got here. So 2 things. First, Chris was very deliberate in informing, if not educating, all of our staff. You will learn these skills. Taking the time and helping everybody in the room, literally all of them, to understand we're all going to go to school. We're all going to learn about cloud and how to appropriately design, operate, and manage these environments. So that gave me the opportunity, as we went through the negotiations with multiple providers, to ensure that training was a foundational level of our cloud transformation strategy. No matter what direction we take, our people have to be educated, and they have to be educated at a credentialed level. So for AWS, everybody on the full IT staff that's touching our cloud infrastructure will be AWS Cloud Practitioner certified at the beginning. So step one, and then further and more advanced certifications as time goes on. So having the AWS team come on site to our campus in Northeast Georgia to help us train, educate, and skill our employees has paid a tremendous amount of dividends. It's been very valuable. We're not quite there yet. I would love to have 400 people certified in it yet. Now I think I'm somewhere in the 30 or 40s, but those are the individuals that are actually going to have hands-on keyboards when the dev environment goes live. By the time we're prod October, November, we will absolutely have all of our team members certified. So that training and education is a critical piece to the success.
And just so folks know, we do have training tracks that are mapped to the roles within organizations that are live on Epic, so you know who knows who needs what training and how to get that training.
Right.
We also like to incentivize good behavior, and so we do have some reimbursement that's available for the time that you're putting into educating your staff to make it a little bit easier on the organizations. Because, I mean, the staff that know how to do it, even if they're working with a partner, that's best for everyone.
Yeah.
That's right.
And I think as a CIO, I want to pour as much knowledge as I can into my team. This is a skill and capability and a competency that lives beyond an activation, right? I kind of, I tell a story in IT orientation. I got some mad VAC skills. You put me on a deck with C++, I am in the zone, right? That's not really relevant anymore, right? So cloud certification, being competent in those skills are relevant. And I want to make sure you remain relevant so you're employable and you take care of your family. And guess what? You can take care of us because we want to be your preferred employer. And that's a strategy that, that we apply to all of our systems.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, the time has flown. I have more questions, but we probably won't have time to get through all of them. So I just kind of want to give you guys kind of the floor to share some parting thoughts. Maybe we'll start with Matt and go over. But for folks that maybe are in the audience or are going to be watching this later, who are in a position where they know there's something that they need to do with cloud. They know that there's a compelling event. There's an objective that they know that they need to accomplish, but they don't maybe necessarily know how to get started, right? What's step one in this type of a transition, things like that. Maybe Matt, kind of give your thoughts, and I'd love to kind of get parting thoughts on that topic for everybody here.
Sure. Step one is to talk to somebody. That may start in this room. That may be through a CIO friend that you have. It may be through a partner. And I mean that in the broad sense of the word, whether that's a system integrator or AWS themselves. But really just, when something is too overwhelming because it seems scary and you don't know where to get started, the answer to that is somewhere.
Right.
You just get started and you can figure it out from there. And, the right partner is going to care deeply about your success. They're going to be honest with you, even when it's not the thing that you want to hear, and they're going to be there every step of the way.
Yeah, well said. I think for me, having a partner that will speak openly and honestly, even when it's awkward, right, in front of the senior staff to call the baby ugly, it's a little uncomfortable, but you don't want a partner that just keeps telling you, yeah, you're fine, you're doing great, keep moving, and then you smash the Porsche into the wall. Nobody wants that. So you really want people that can be open and honest and deliberate and give you that feedback that, hey, this part is not running really well. I want to see this improve, or you need to change this seat or that horse. You can throw whatever analogy in there you want, but you really need people to be open and honest with you. And we took the approach of having a cloud assessment or analysis, kind of a transformation analysis up front with Optimum, and that paid a lot of value to us because we were able to understand, okay, going into the RFP, here's where we're positioned. Here are the opportunities where we can negotiate and areas where we're definitely going to need help. Training, of course, is one of them. So taking that time, taking the effort to really drive it in the right direction, it will certainly make significant benefits in the future.
I would say regardless of where you are, whether it's an immediate thing or a longer term, understand where you are today, right? I had the opportunity to say, my hardware is going to be refreshed in 3 years. My chipset is going to expire in 3 years. What is the plan over a 3-year course? That means that the board is not surprised by that. Your CFO is not surprised by that. We can incorporate it. So we went into this year's budget. We're on a fiscal year, so our year was in October, and there was no discussion about, oh, there's a big operating lift, because it was a planned, right? And we knew it. And the other thing I could say is, oh, and by the way, we're not going to spend $15 million on iron, right? And that's really important to understand that roadmap.
Wonderful. Thank you guys. I really appreciate you guys coming up here and sharing your guys' experience and thoughts. We do have a few minutes left. If there's any questions from anybody in the audience that wants to ask anybody a question up here, feel free to, we'll give it a second here to see if anybody wants to raise their hand to ask a brave
Don't be shy.
question.
I think we put them to sleep.
I think so.
Yeah,
If not,
no marshmallow.
I know we need more marshmallows around the fireside chat. All right. Well, thanks everybody. I appreciate you guys coming for this session. Thank you guys for joining us here, and I hope everybody enjoys ViVE.